Good morning. This is Anita, and you're listening to Cutting Edge with Anita. We've had some fantastic shows, as you know, for the last 6 months, and I keep looking for people who will really just set your mind on fire. And I think I found somebody else who can do that. He's quite a guy, and he's in his late 80s, which makes him even better in my word and my mind. But Sumner Jules Glimcher is he is Professor Emeritus from NYU. He was, prior to his retirement, the director of the Department of Film, Video, and Broadcasting at NYU School of Continuing Education. And what we're going to discuss this morning is what he considers the most significant development in publishing since Gutenberg. Now, this exciting new world of publishing is based upon a three-legged stool. It's self-publishing, reading tablets, and the e-book. Glimcher, who has spent the past several years in writing and self-publishing his memoir called A Filmmaker's Journal, he can now attach the iPad to any large screen and show how he was able to embed excerpts from 22 of his documentaries into his narrative, and books can now include music and sound, still images that enlarge when touched, and films in sync sound and full color, greatly enriching the reading experience. His memoir is now available on all reading tablets and computers, and also as a softcover conventional book for those who like to read an old-fashioned book. Well, he's not old-fashioned, I'll tell you that, and I've read so much about him, and it's such a great pleasure to welcome him to our show this morning. Good morning. How are you, Sumner?
Good morning, Anita. I'm great, thank you. How are you? I'm
great. I've been waiting for you. I'm very thrilled. I've told a lot of people, of course, that you're going to be doing this. I read your whole history of your life, and I guess you're like the ever-ready bunny. You just don't stop, do you?
Well, I've been a very lucky guy, Anita. I don't know how much I've told. You've read a lot about me, apparently. You know, I had 3 near-death experiences. I was shot during the Battle of the Bulge when I was 20 years old, and that taught me one very important thing, and that is to appreciate every day that you're alive ever since. It was a good beginning, actually.
And you've done that. I can see that. It's very exciting to hear what you're doing now. Explain it in your own words, what someone's going to see when they get your book.
Well, as you did a lot of it all, you explained a lot already, but the amazing thing about publishing, it is just astonishing. I mean, since Gutenberg, some 600 years ago, this is the first time that publishing and printing has had this major innovation, and that is a result of the 3 objects, self-publishing, e-books, and the reading tablet, because you can now write a book that has sound and images on it. And if that isn't one of the most astonishing new developments in printing, I can't imagine what is. So that, initially, my major work has been as a filmmaker. I've made some 3 dozen documentaries, and I have embedded excerpts from 22 of them in the book. So when you buy this book on an iPad, which is what I would recommend because the iPad has twice the reading area of the Nook or the Kindle, when you buy it on an iPad and you're reading it and you see an image, like in my first chapter I have a picture of the Battle of the Bulge, you touch that one picture with a fingertip, it enlarges and fills the entire screen. And further along in the book, when you come to one of my films that has a play arrow in it, and you touch the play arrow, you see a 3-minute excerpt of a film in sync sound, full color. It is revolutionary because now a book can contain sound and film and is therefore far richer than the ordinary textbook that just has words in it. Not that I'm against words. I have a lot of words in my book because I tell the story of my life, which was mostly a big accident. I just I never made a plan for my life. I just sort of went with the flow, and that's just been wonderful for me because I've enjoyed it so much.
Well, Sumner, I have certainly enjoyed reading everything that you've done. I got onto, I guess it's the Barnes & Noble sample chapter, and I was reading some of it. I was so fascinated. I mean, you could be 150 years old with all the things that you've done. So you're only 88, and that's okay. But what I wanted to say now is that, are you the only one doing this? Is this something really revolutionary?
It is absolutely revolutionary, and I was inspired by Al Gore. Al Gore wrote a book called The Assault on Reason that you can buy, I think, for some very low price from Apple. And it took him 2 years with advanced Apple engineers to put this together because it is an electronic enhanced book similar to mine. When I saw that some 2 years or so, I began to write my own memoir. I just started because I've lived, to me, a very interesting life, most of it by accident. And I began to write my memoir, and I realized that as a filmmaker, I could embed excerpts of my film. So when Gore's book came out, that's what inspired me to do it. And I have to tell you, it does take a certain amount of technical expertise, and I'm only partially able to use that. So I did have enough brains to hire a young Apple engineer, one of the kids that used to man the Genius Bar at Apple. His name is James Duran, and James was able to help me with all the technical stuff. Of course, I've had a lot of other help. You know, the Westport Arts Center a couple of weeks ago had me do a talk on this new publishing adventure, and people like Peter and Helen and Jill who were so helpful. And I showed my film on their screen. I showed my book on the screen, and there was a woman there named Gabby Coatsworth, who you should know because she wrote a blog about me, and in the blog she mentioned you and this interview and told people how to listen to it. So her blog went out over the internet, and you may have a lot of listeners that are listening to this program because of Gabby, who was a wonderful person. So you need help. I mean, you can't do it all yourself. At least I couldn't. I know my limitations, and knowing who to go to for help. And if you're going to write an enhanced ebook, I urge you to get a youngster, you know, in his 20s or his or her 20s or 30s to help you with the technical stuff, because that's something that you absolutely need to know.
So now we're going to call this Publishing Revolution an ebook. Is this, what would you title this new revolutionary way for someone to get? It's really mixed media. It's a multimedia effect, and we do this with our magazine where we have the radio and the magazine and the internet. But I really think this is it's almost preposterous that you can read a book and then get the sound and everything. It's almost, it's so out of our context. And so what are we going to call this?
Well, I just call it the Publishing Revolution. I'll give you one example from the book. There's a division of Columbia called the Center for Mass Communication, which I joined. I became its manager. But prior to my becoming its manager, it was approached after World War II by the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, who wanted to get a message to masses of people, and they came to Columbia and went to a man named Eric Barno, with whom I worked for many years later, and said, look, we have learned that penicillin can cure syphilis. Now, prior to the discovery of penicillin, the American government was spending millions and millions of dollars each year taking care of the syphilitic insane. And they wanted to cure syphilis if they could, because when you have syphilis, you get older and you go crazy, and there was no real cure for it. So Barno came up with a little ditty that he titled That Ignorant, Ignorant Cowboy. And he went to a friend named Tom Glazer, with whom I worked later, and Tom put this to music, and they wrote this song called That Ignorant, Ignorant Cowboy. Now, in my book, you write about this, but now when you see the book, you see a record, Mercury Records. You touch that record, and you hear the sound of Tom Glazer singing this wonderful, wonderful little ditty. It became a jukebox favorite. People were throwing nickels into jukeboxes. This was 1948. And the rate of syphilis dropped tremendously just as a result of this one little song. So that when you can listen to something on a book as well as read about it, it just provides a whole new dimension.
And I'm thinking about, as one ages, their vision in many instances becomes impaired, and they can't read as easily. Even though I know iPads, it's larger, it's still tiresome, and some people who have macular degeneration, it becomes blurred. But with the music, and even with your photographs, I think it gives them a whole new insight into reading.
It provides a tremendous new dimension. Pictures, sound. I'm a filmmaker by profession. I make documentary films, and I do that, and I love it because there are a few things as satisfying as making a film, a documentary film that provides information. And to combine that now in a book where you can have text. My book has several hundred pages, and I go through my life because I've had some interesting experiences in my life. So you're able to provide information with the text, with writing and the reading, and enhance that with sound, music, and film. You have the full range of communication. And to me, this is the biggest revolution since Gutenberg.
This is a wonderful thing for you to now add to your long list of credits, and I did read so many of them, I was just overwhelmed. But it's good to see people who, of course, who are aging with such a wealth of experience, and not just sitting back and saying, well, I did it. Now you keep moving ahead. And I wasn't kidding about the ever-ready bunny this morning. I still think that there's something here that young people are going to grab, and you're going to find yourself in great demand to teach them. So you're not finished with teaching.
Oh, by no means, because to me, life is a continuously teaching and learning experience. I'm 88 years old, and I've never felt better in my life. And since my mother lived to 98 or so, I figure I have the benefit of not only living to her age, but probably another decade or two, because, the discoveries in medicine and knowing how to live and knowing the proper foods to eat and so on. A friend of mine not long ago came to me, and he's putting together a program of using older people and younger people to do this cross-generation thing. One of the things about our country, which is an amazing place in many ways, but something I think we can learn from other countries, is that most societies respect age. When I lived in Germany, I was called Herr Doctor. When I spent lots of time in Japan and China, these people revere older people because we presumably, after a lifetime of experiences, have gained some wisdom. In our crazy country, we go crazy over youngsters. Not to demean youth, because youth is a great time in life, but why do we throw our old people away? Why don't we learn from them? That many of them can teach us many, many things. So my friend, Michael Perdoff, who has come to me and said, Sumner, can we do something with older people and younger people to do an intergenerational aspect of education? Why can't we combine older and younger to provide common experience that might help our society. So I said, Michael, I think it's a great idea. And so he's now starting up something, and I think it might be a very useful thing for education in the future.
Sounds that way. My guest is Sumner Jules Glimcher, and he is a man, a real Renaissance man, I have to say. And we're talking about the publishing revolution. It's the way it's happening is we're going to be able to look at an iPad with a book, or any other way that you're going to get a book, but he calls it a three-legged stool: self-publishing, reading tablets, and ebooks. And what he's doing is he's combining, and it's such an interesting thing, he's combining sound, and of course, which would be music and photographs, and the words, and what have I left out? Anything? Yeah, well, everything's in color. It's the film, the sound is all synced with the way that you're reading it. Of course, you have to push a button to make sure that happens, but it's very thrilling, and I can't wait to get onto that book to hear it myself. So now you're thinking about, are you going to be having another a book? Is this it? I mean, what else are you writing?
I think the next project I want to undertake is, when I have been working on location, and I have worked all around the world, I always, in the old days, I used to carry 3 heavy Nikons, each with a different lens, with a strap around my neck, and traveled around the world not only with a video camera, but with 3 still cameras. One of the places I found most interesting, a friend of mine introduced me to China soon after the Shanghai Communique was written, and it was possible for Americans to visit China. And it's one of my favorite. China and Japan are 2 of my favorite places. There's a certain culture in East Asia, and it goes from cultural to religious to cuisine and so on, that's very different from the rest of the world. And I was utterly taken by China. So I made several early visits to China when the early way of life, long before the Renaissance in Shanghai in the last decade or 2, has transformed Shanghai into a major metropolis with 100-story buildings and so on. But I spent many, many trips in China, and I took thousands of still pictures. And in those days before electronic picture taking, I used old-fashioned film, and I shot slides. I shot color transparencies, and I have several thousand of them. And they're really remarkable. They show a way of life, like river life in the past in China, when women would go down to the river and wash clothes on the riverbank. And I took pictures of everything from the Great Wall. I have hundreds of pictures of the Great Wall and people touring it. And I have really, I would say probably several thousand still pictures of China. And I think I want to publish a book. This is going to be a simple picture book. It's not going to have film or anything, but it will show still pictures of China. China in the past, the ancient China, and it will have probably several hundred of these color pictures. I think that's the project I'm thinking of working on next, because, one of the things I've learned as I've grown older, that you want to keep busy. I can't imagine people who retire and do nothing. I mean, if you want to really keep alive, you keep working. You do whatever you love. And I love taking pictures. I love sharing my pictures and films and so on. So I think that'll be my next project, a picture book on China. Do you think people would be interested in that?
Oh, absolutely. Anything you do, I'm sure they will be. I want everyone to be able to get to your website. It's Sumner Jules Glimcher. And I'm going to spell that. Remember, this is Pencil Talk Radio. Get your pencils out. Even though this is Cutting Edge with Anita, I still have to tell you that. So please get your pencils out and write this down. Sumner. Jules, Jules, Glimcher, Glimcher. www.sumnerjules.com. When you do that, you will find the most fascinating man who is just absolutely passionate about what he's doing. He's very excited about the future, as you can hear. And I want you to just read a little something. And you're right, I did get into that blog. And this woman was saying it was astonishing for several reasons when she read it's called A Filmmaker's Journal. You will want to get that too. First, Sumner's career has taken many twists and turns, starting with a stint of active combat in World War II and following by teaching at NYU. He's just had a very, very unusual life. But what interested this person most about his book was not the story, fascinating though it was. What hooked me was the fact that this was the first interactive ebook I'd seen. It contains links to clips from Sumner's movies, as well as to an oddity of a song called That Ignorant Cowboy, which you just talked about, designed to be a way of telling people about the invention of penicillin, that syphilis was now curable. Of course, we heard that too. So why is this so extraordinary? Because Sumner's very charming and gregarious, 85, and he's still taking a very active interest in all new technology. I don't know if you travel to South Florida very much, Sumner, but somehow, maybe it's the same in California, but our population here seems to forget their age. Many of them are in their 80s and 90s, and they look like they're in their 70s, and they're so active, and they're doing so many things. There's so many book clubs and golf clubs and things like that. So I really thought I wanted to write a book one time called No Age. I don't want people to classify me or you as 88 or I'm going to be 75. That's foolish because unfortunately people see or hear that name and they say they have all other kind of, they put other connotations with it. And I don't think they should do that. So maybe we shouldn't be a certain age anymore.
I think that age is just a number, your true age is your spirit. I feel like I'm 40. I'm extremely lucky because I'm in excellent health. I feel great. I wake up every morning and I can't wait to get to the computer to see what the day's email is going to bring. Age is a number. I feel totally at home with, I love, one of the things about teaching is you're dealing with young people, but I also enjoy dealing with older people who are active and doing what they should be doing, eating well, working at things they love. You've got to love what you do. I think one of the earliest lessons I had was when I was graduated from college. I was lucky enough to get into Harvard right after World War II. And because of the nuclear bombs we had dropped, I thought that nuclear energy was going to be a great future. And so when they said to me, what do you want to major in? I said, well, I think I'll major in nuclear physics. It seems like a logical thing to do.
Okay.
One of the shocks, Anita, one of the shocks of my life was when I started Harvard, and I suddenly discovered for the first time in my life I was in a school where everybody was smarter than I was. So in high school, I had done very well. Suddenly at Harvard, my classmates were people like Bobby Kennedy and George Plimpton. Everybody there knew more than I did. And so I didn't do very well in nuclear physics, which was very difficult for me. Luckily, a friend named Hartford Gunn, who later became the head of WGBH and then PBS in general, Hartford said to me, Sumner, you should join the radio station. And I joined the radio station, and I just loved it. You sat in front of a microphone, and you spoke to the whole city of Boston, and I thought, this is what I want to do. I believe education will save the world, and radio and television, which was on the horizon, are going to be the two new tools by which we will learn. Little did I realize that television would become a medium to sell soap instead of teaching. Be that as it may, when I was graduated in June of 1948, I was offered two jobs. I was offered a job testing missiles for the government in White Sands, New Mexico, at a salary of $70 a week, which in 1948 was great. and I was offered a job at a little radio station in Boston for $35 a week. You know which job I took.
Of course.
And I never regretted it. Do what you love. Don't do things for money. Do what you love. Enjoy your life. I have never had a day that I haven't enjoyed getting up in the morning, except perhaps the day when I was shot. That was not a good day. But, it was, in a way, it was a miracle, because as somebody said to me during the Battle of the Bulge, you have two options. You're either going to be killed or wounded. So getting shot was a blessing.
I love your humor. You have a lot of admirers. Of course, one is a mutual friend of ours, Gene Cohen, who you're doing work with. I guess it's Westminster Productions. And
she's amazing.
She is.
I say there are three people without whom I wouldn't have written a book, and Jean was one of them.
Well, she is like that. She's a very special woman, and of course she's brought us together. But I also want to say that people who are listening now, you are such an inspiration, and people can do the same thing in their own field. People who've been in all sorts of businesses. Just don't let that pass by. Stick with it. Think of what you can do. Get some young kids around. See what they think about it. Get other opinions. Let me give you Sumner's website again. It's SUMNER, Jules Glimcher, JULESGLIMCHER.com. So again, that's Sumner Jules Glimcher.com. And of course, we don't have very much more time, but I wanted to ask you, so do you attribute your good health to a dietary pattern or your exercise, or is it just good genes?
Well, I do the best I can in every way. I was lucky because my dad was a Russian peasant, and he owned a farm, lived in a farm, and he was a very sturdy man. He lived to 90. And my mom to 98, and so I had that on my side. I swim 3 days a week. I try to swim for 30 minutes 3 days a week, and I try to eat as healthy food as I can. So I figure I have several decades to go. I think, people say 80 is the new 60. I'm hoping to live well into the hundreds, because when I tell people today I'm 88, they say that's nothing. I know so-and-so who's 105, or Belle Kaufman, who's a member of the Dutch Street Club with me, recently celebrated her 100th anniversary.
And when you say that, I'm laughing because I interview a lot of physicians, and I will say that someone I was talking with an orthopedic surgeon, and I said, so how old is the oldest person that you've operated on with new hips, new knees? Because years ago, when someone was 90, they just said it wouldn't pay. He said 102. And so it is different now, and I appreciate so much the fact of who you are and what you'll be doing, and I really hope that you'll stay in touch with us and let us go along with you, as they say. So thank you very much for being on our show, Sumner, and we will keep up and see what else you're going to do next.
Anita, thank you so much for inviting me. I look forward to meeting you.
Oh, absolutely. Now you're in our world. You're not going to get out, so forget it. But we'll talk about it, because there's some things I'm doing that I would like to share with you on a personal note, and then see how we can collaborate in some way.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Sumner. Goodbye.